Nuclear fission is a process where a large and unstable nucleus breaks apart into smaller fragments when it is bombarded by external particles such as alpha particles, protons, deuterons, X-rays, or neutrons. Deuterons are nothing but a deuterium nucleus which has got one proton and one neutron. Neutrons are the preferred means of achieving nuclear fission because as they don't have any charge, they are not repelled by the nucleus, which will be having an overall positive charge. During fission, extra neutrons are produced. For example, 2 to 3 are produced during each fission reaction. So these can be used to sustain the reaction further. Among various radioactive species, uranium-233, 235 and plutonium-239 can be fissioned by neutrons having any amount of energy, whereas most stable species like uranium-238, thorium-232, plutonium-240, etc. require high energy neutrons, typically neutrons having energy greater than 14 million electron volts. Please note that these nuclei are more stable because of the even rule that we had seen earlier, and that's the reason they require neutrons having higher energies. We can see a schematic and a representation of the fission reaction below. There is a neutron which strikes a uranium nucleus and it forms two daughter nuclei, namely xenon and strontium. We can see there are two extra neutrons produced during this reaction. So it is indicated that this neutron may either be lost by a leakage mechanism or it could be consumed in later reactions. The reaction is expressed in a form like this. Originally we have a uranium-235 nucleus which is bombarded by one neutron producing xenon, strontium and two neutrons. We can ensure that the atomic numbers add up to 92 and the mass numbers here add up to 236, 235 plus 1. We introduce two terminologies here. Fission fragments are the immediate products of the fission reaction. For example, here we have xenon 140 and strontium 94. These could undergo changes further down the line. These fission fragments, along with other decay products such as subatomic particles or electromagnetic emissions, together they are called as fission products. The steps of fission reaction are detailed here. The neutron does not split the nucleus immediately. What it does initially is to get absorbed within the nucleus and add some excitation to the nucleus. In the excited state, the nucleus is unstable and that unstable nucleus is what undergoes the fission. So that is shown here. Uranium-235 impinged upon by the neutron becomes uranium-236 because the mass number exceeds by 1 and that will be in an excited state and that is going to undergo fission. In case the neutrons don't have sufficient excitation energy, the nucleus may simply emit some gamma rays or it could eject a neutron or any other particle. It does not undergo fission. In fact, around 16% of the overall neutron absorption by the nuclei don't result in any fission. It is seen that uranium-235 and the fission fragments such as xenon and strontium, they have a neutron to proton ratio of roughly 1.55. The stable range is 1.2 to 1.4. Something has to be done in order to bring down the neutron to proton ratio. This can be achieved either by emitting a neutron or by increasing the number of protons. So that is what is done in the next stages. So the fission fragments undergo beta decay. If you recall, in beta decay, the neutron gets converted into a proton and then an electron. So number of protons increases and we have a reduction in the neutron to proton ratio, making the nucleus more stable. These reactions are shown here. This is called as a fission chain because each species will be having subsequent decay stages. Initially we have got xenon. Xenon undergoes beta decay. The half-life is also indicated here. So 16 seconds is the half-life for this reaction. So xenon becomes cesium. You can see that during the beta decay the atomic number increases by 1. So this will be having a slightly lower neutron to proton ratio. That will be slightly more stable, but still it is going to undergo further decay steps as shown here. So cesium becomes barium, then lanthanum and finally cerium, which is a stable compound. So by the time it reaches here, the atomic number has gone up to 58. Mass number remains the same because again neutron and proton have nearly the same mass. On the other hand, strontium undergoes a two-stage decay, first to yttrium and then to zirconium. So because of these emissions of gamma rays, neutrons, etc., the reactor needs to have a very strong shielding so that these things can be absorbed and they are not let out, which can cause a major hazard. The first figure here shows the fission product data for uranium-235 by thermal and 14 mega electron volt neutrons. What is indicated here are the fission yield in terms of percentage for different species as indicated by their mass number. So here we can see that the fission products are predominantly in this range, having a mass number of around 95 in one case and a mass of around 145 in the other case. So these represent the fission chain species of the xenon family here for 145 and for the strontium family here for around 95. That is what we had seen in the previous slide. So these are the two dominant groups, 95 mass number for strontium and around 140-145 for xenon. Similarly, here we have the fission product data for U233 and Pu239 by thermal neutrons. Thermal neutrons are the slower ones, we will see that later. Typically they have low energy compared to the 14 mega electron volt neutrons. So here also we can see the similar two peaks in the case of uranium and plutonium fission. Next we will try to estimate what is energy release from fission. So we are again considering the fission of U235 by one neutron forming barium and krypton and releasing two neutrons. So if we compare the masses on the left side and the right side, we can see the equations here. This is for the U235, this is for the neutron, this is in terms of AMU. This is barium, krypton and again two neutrons. So we can find out the mass defect in terms of the difference of the masses of the products and the initial components, and that will be minus 0.2 AMU, indicating that the products have a smaller mass compared to the initial nucleus and the neutron. Corresponding energy release can be estimated by using the fact that each AMU develops 931 MeV by the mass to energy conversion mechanism. So this corresponds to 193.6 mega electron volts. So this will be for one uranium-235 nucleus. Uranium-233 and Pu-239 also have nearly the same values. Now this quantity is a prompt energy release, meaning that it is immediately released after the fission. There could be subsequent release of energy also, which happens slowly. That is because of the slow decay of fission fragments. As we have seen earlier, the decay can proceed in stages, so each stage could release little bit of energy. And again, some of the neutrons may get captured by nuclei and don't take part in fission. So this could release certain gamma rays or other emissions which also release some energy. So these are smaller quantities, but that proceeds over a long period of time, and that is called as a delayed energy release. And adding these two, we find that the total energy release per nucleus is around 200 MeV. Now we will try to calculate the energy release on a mass basis. Remember, the value we had found earlier was for one nucleus, so we need to find out how many nuclei are there in 1 gram. So that can be done by making use of Avogadro's constant and the molar mass of the uranium-235. The calculation will be like this: the Avogadro constant multiplied by the energy per nucleus gives us the energy released by 1 mole of uranium-235, and this is the mass of 1 mole. So that will be the energy that is developed by 1 gram of uranium-235. You can see again that that is a huge amount. We can convert that into more familiar units like joules or kilowatt hours or megawatt days, and this in fact brings us another terminology, that is what we call as the fuel burnup. That is energy in megawatt day produced by 1 ton of fuel. At this point we have to also remember that all the fuel does not undergo fission. Now during the fission process, some of the fission fragments or even the fuel nuclei can capture some neutrons and don't undergo further fission. This may end up with some non-fission reactions, and if this proceeds for a long time, the fission can altogether stop because of the non-availability of fissionable nuclei. In that case, we say that the fuel has been poisoned. So the fuel rods have to be taken out, and they need to be reprocessed by removing this fission products in order to make it usable again. We have seen that each fission of uranium-235 produces roughly 2 to 3 neutrons. The average is around 2.5. Again, some of these neutrons may be lost because of non-fission capture, that means absorption by fission products, or it could be even absorbed by structural material of the reactor. It can also be absorbed by the coolant, moderator, etc. The moderator is something that is used to slow down the neutrons. We will see those details later. So these components can also absorb the neutrons and make them unavailable for further fission. Some neutrons may even be lost by leakage. Leakage can be reduced by reducing the surface to volume ratio of the reactor. That means reactors having higher size will be having lower surface to volume ratio, and therefore the leakage will be lower. So this means that there has to be a minimum size of the reactor which is required to sustain the fission reaction, and a corresponding mass. So this is called as a critical mass or the critical size of the reactor. It is seen that nearly half of the fission neutrons produced have to be retained in order to sustain fission. So leakage or non-fission capture can account for up to 52%, and we can still have sustained fission reaction. Here we will try to evaluate the neutron energies. We can use our usual formula for calculating the kinetic energy of one neutron using its mass and the velocity, and this is nothing but the conversion from joules to MeVs. So the expression is over here for the energy of one neutron having velocity v. The range of neutron energy is typically 0.075 to 17 MeVs, and they progressively lose energy because of collisions with other nuclei in the reactor. This is called as scattering. Neutrons can be classified as fast, intermediate or slow depending on their energy level. Here we can see the energy level and the corresponding velocities of different classes. Neutrons which are released during delayed reactions are slower than the prompt neutrons. They possess lower kinetic energy and velocity, and as we have seen earlier, slower neutrons are more effective in causing fission reaction. They could be much more useful for the reaction control. Here we look at what are called as thermal neutrons. As we had seen earlier, the moderators are media used to slow down the neutrons, and slow neutrons achieve thermal equilibrium with the moderator. Hence they are called as thermal neutrons. The reactors which use thermal neutrons are called as thermal fission reactors. There are other categories which use a different category of neutrons, which we will see later. From the kinetic theory of gases, we can calculate the mean velocity of thermal neutrons in terms of the absolute temperature. That is the expression. Corresponding most probable kinetic energy can be found out using this equation, and we can convert that into electron volts. So we can get an expression for the kinetic energy of neutrons in terms of the temperature. For example, at 20 degrees Celsius, the most probable kinetic energy is this much, and the corresponding velocity will be roughly 2200 meter per second. Next class we will see how these aspects are useful in designing the nuclear reactors. Thank you.